Visualization is important in data science and any kind of work we do with data because visualization allows us to see our data. Now, if we're looking at a table of data that contains, 10,000 records and, 30 columns of data, which is a huge data set, we can't look at that and make sense of it. We can't just stare at the data unless you're some kind of Rain Man kind of person or you have the ability to ingest 10,000 numbers and make sense of it in your head. And if you have that ability, you don't need me, okay? Just go get a job with some really smart people making a crap ton of money because that's a gift, okay? Most of us don't have it. Most of us can't look at a big table of data or honestly, even like a medium sized table of data and just instantly make sense of it. But with a visualization of that data, if I use the right visualization, I set it up correctly, I can provide you with a picture that will let you make sense of that data and be very useful. And it's useful not just for communicating data between like two experts, it's useful for conveying the meaning of data to the general population. So if you want to communicate something important about a data set to a whole lot of people, you don't just give them the raw data, you give them a visualization that shows them a picture. This is one of those times when the quote, "A picture is worth 1,000 words," is literally true. So for today, we will be covering a module called Plotly. Okay, it's not the only or even necessarily the most popular. We have Matplotlib, or however you want to say it, the math plot library for Python, which is probably the most popular to be used for visualizations. However, I really like Plotly. I like it for several reasons. Number one reason, I think it's much easier to use at a beginner level. Number two reason is all of its plots can be saved out as images. So if you want to email somebody your visualization or put it on a web page or a social media post or something, easy to do. Number three reason is, natively speaking, all of the visualizations that you can create with Plotly are interactive, which means I can start clicking on it, I can zoom in on areas, I can interact with them in a variety of different ways. And I'm going to show you that as we get into it. But I think that's a really cool feature of these visualizations, whereas the Matplot library is pretty static and not so great. I think visually speaking, it's easier to make nicer looking plots and graphs and charts with Plotly as well. So here we go. Let's take a look at Plotly and what it is. So this is just a gallery of some of the things you can do with Plotly. Now, when we think of like a chart, we're thinking of like a line graph or a bar chart or maybe a pie chart. But there are literally hundreds. If you get into stats and visualizations and data science, there are hundreds of different things you can do. Heat maps, bubble charts. We have box charts, scatter plots. This is the figured data structure. Oh no, that's not what that chart is called. That's something else. But we have literally hundreds of different ways, including if you add on a map module to this, you can actually do interactive maps that show you like the population of different zip codes in Kern County or something like that, where you can click on each zip code and it'll pop up a window that shows you how many people live there, and you could do a breakdown by race. I mean, you could do all kinds of really cool interactive visual things with maps and some really cool stuff that we won't even begin to touch today because it's just way past this class. but you can use it in visualizing artificial intelligence and machine learning. Even for applications like image decoding, image recognition, which is what a lot of cars use now. You guys have ever ridden in a car that tells you when something's too close or somebody's crossing the street in front of you? Teslas do it. A lot of cars do it. Actually, you don't even have to have a fancy car. My car does it, and it's a Hyundai. So, but it recognizes things like the lane lines and people in front of you and vehicle speed and that sort of thing. That is all AI and machine learning. Okay, it's using an image and decoding it in some way. So we've got all kinds of things that you can do with Plotly. We're going to stay mostly in this range today with just the basics. But I'm going to show you just some of the things you can do with a very few lines of code with Plotly. So we have all kinds of different charts and things that you can do in Plotly. And I'm going to show you how to do some of these today. But this is an actual Plotly chart, and you can see not only can I interact with it, but if I click and drag to a section of it, I can actually zoom in on that visualization and get a closer look at that piece of the data. If I wanted to look at this section, I can zoom in on that. So it's really, really cool. And all of this interactive stuff is just handled. All I say is make that chart, and it does it for me. And all of the interaction is just automatically built in. So it's really cool. And you can see there's a lot of different stuff you can do. I can do a matrix that has all these different charts in it, so you can look at data from different angles. There's some really neat looking charts. I don't even know what all of these mean. This one kind of blew my mind a little bit, right? This is the population of different countries around the world over time, population growth. Okay, so you see the general trend here. What are the two things that stick out to you here in a big way? Right? Isn't your eye kind of drawn to these? So I was like, okay, well, what are the two cases where we had massive population declines? One, Cambodia in 1977. Anybody know what was happening in Cambodia in 1977? Huge genocide. They were literally killing people. Rwanda in 1992, same thing. Okay, huge genocide in that country. So the population of that country massively declined because a huge number of the population was killing each other at that time, which is kind of crazy. So this is like the power of a visualization to just communicate on a very simple level something that's really a big deal, right? And there are probably some other interesting things in here if I was going to thin this out a little bit. But the things that I immediately started wondering about here was that, and that's the cool thing about having interactive visualization, because if I can't do that with my mouse, there's nothing here that explains what those countries even are, other than one is in Asia and one is in Africa. That's all I can tell by this if I can't interact with it. But the interactive part of it is really cool. So I really like that about Plotly. So we've got all kinds of different, you can do timelines. This is called a funnel chart. Okay, the oldie but a goodie pie chart. Who doesn't like pie, right? This one is really an interesting chart, and it is called a sunburst. I just like how it looks, but you can kind of read it, and this is a measure of life expectancy, but you can see the life expectancy difference between Europe and Africa, and then these are all of the countries that belong to that continent. So it's really interesting. And again, if this wasn't interactive, these lines wouldn't mean anything to me, but I could actually mouse over these. The coolest thing about that is notice it's popping up in the color that corresponds to the life expectancy for that country. So even without reading, I can get a feel for it. There's some really neat stuff here. Here's another one, another view of that same data, life expectancy. And you can see the world is the biggest square. And then Asia is the next. And then in Asia, we've got all these countries. In Africa, we've got all these countries. But you can kind of see just by looking at it what those critical differences are. And you can also see kind of the population difference, right? You can see that Asia is almost 2/3 of the world's population just by looking at that one picture. Very interesting stuff. Okay, so we've got lots and lots of different things, line charts, we've got maps, heat maps. You can put pictures in there, and then you can attach these. You can attach data to an actual map of a region. You can zoom in and out on those areas, and again, you can hover over those. This is all using geographical information system data that's combined with that data that we have. So really, really cool stuff. Sadly, we won't get that into it today, but you can kind of see, oh, there's another one that I really like how it looks down here a bit. Where is that? This one. Okay, you can also style things pretty well, but this is an interesting one showing the relative strength of wind gusts in different directions. Okay, so this maps to the compass points, but there's a lot of different ways that you can use this. I kind of like it because it reminds me of a video game I used to play when I was younger. Anybody have seen that one? It's called Tempest. It's really old, but the creatures would come at you from the middle, and you would have the thing that went around the outside. And you could shoot them. Kind of a cool game mechanic. I haven't seen that used very much, but anyway, let's take a look at some of the basic plot types. I'm going to introduce it to you, and then I'm going to show you how to do that plot using some sample data.